Some people just don't like you, even if they act like they do. It's not easy to spot, but trust me, it's real. They'll smile in your face, pretend to be your friend, but deep down, they're hoping you fail. It's a hard truth, but recognizing it is key. I've been there, thinking I had people who had my back, only to realize they were quietly waiting for me to trip up. So, let's talk about the subtle signs that someone doesn't like you, but is hiding it. Imagine this. You're in a group, laughing and sharing stories, feeling all warm and fuzzy. But then, you notice one person always seems to take a jab at you, disguised as humor. They might say something like, "Oh, you really think you can pull that off?" with a big grin on their face. At first it feels like just a lighthearted joke, right? But deep down, you start to wonder if there's more to it. This brings us to a crucial point. If we don't learn to recognize the signs, we could end up pouring our energy into relationships that don't serve us. Think of it as a garden. If you're watering weeds instead of flowers, you'll never see the blooms you truly desire. Now let's talk about those signs someone might be hiding their true feelings about you. And hey, I get it. This might be a little hard to hear, but trust me, knowing the truth can save you a lot of heartache down the line. But before we dive in, just take a quick moment to check if you're subscribed to the channel. We've got a series of upcoming videos packed with tips to help you improve your life. So, let's get started. First up, let's chat about humor. You know that person who loves to joke around? Well, if you find that you're always the punchline, that's a big red flag. They might crack jokes about your quirks or the little mistakes you make, all while smiling and saying, "I'm just kidding." But let's take a closer look. These jokes can be sneaky little digs meant to chip away at your confidence. It's almost like they're playing a game, where your flaws are the target. And here's the kicker. The more you laugh it off, the more they think it's okay to keep going. It's not just harmless fun, it's a way to keep you feeling small. So, as we explore this topic together, remember, the Stoics teach us to observe and reflect. We don't have to take everything personally, but it's also crucial to recognize when someone isn't treating us with respect. The truth can be uncomfortable, but it can also empower you to make better choices in your relationships. I remember being close to someone who always had a little remark about everything I did, whether it was how I dressed, how I spoke, or even the projects I was working on. At first, I brushed it off, thinking, "Hey, they're just joking, right?" But after a while, I started noticing a pattern. The jokes, they always seemed to focus on what they saw as my flaws. Never a word about my strengths or the things I was proud of. Slowly, I found myself doubting things I'd never second-guessed before. I started thinking, am I really that bad? Am I actually messing up as much as they make it seem? When someone constantly jokes about your supposed weaknesses, it's rarely ever about just having fun. They're testing you, seeing how much you'll tolerate before you push back. It's like they're trying to stay on top by making you feel smaller. The tricky part? They get away with it because we're taught that if we can't take a joke, we're the ones with the problem. But wait a second, let's flip that idea around. Here's the thing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with standing up for yourself when a joke crosses the line. In fact, it's essential. You deserve to be surrounded by people who build you up, not those who tear you down for a quick laugh. Real friends? They don't need to poke at your flaws to feel good about themselves. Instead, they celebrate your wins and help you grow in a way that doesn't make you feel like the punchline. I've seen it so many times. People let these kinds of jokes slide because it feels easier to stay quiet than to speak up. You think, hey, it's not worth making a fuss. But here's the cold, hard truth. Allowing disrespect, even under the disguise of a joke, is a slippery slope. It starts with small jabs, but over time, those harmless comments chip away at your confidence. The more you let it slide, the more they push the boundaries, until one day, you find yourself seriously questioning your self-worth. All because you didn't want to seem too sensitive. I learned this the hard way. Every time I laughed along with those jokes, I was silently giving them permission to keep going. I was letting them disrespect me without even realizing it. But the moment I started standing up for myself and setting clear boundaries, everything shifted. Not just how they treated me, but how I saw myself. I stopped letting their words dictate how I felt. I took control of my own story. So here's my advice for you. The next time someone cracks a joke at your expense, don't just laugh it off. Take a moment and ask yourself, is this actually funny? Or is there something more going on here? If your gut tells you it's more than just a joke, don't be afraid to speak up. Yeah, it might feel awkward. It might even risk the friendship. But here's the deal. Your self-respect is worth far more than someone else's bad sense of humor. Life's too short to hang around with people who need to tear you down to feel better about themselves. If their version of friendship is constantly pointing out your flaws, it's time to reevaluate. The friends who truly care about you, they'll lift you up, celebrate your strengths, and push you to be better, without making you feel small. So stand tall, speak up. Don't let anyone reduce you to a punchline. Your worth isn't something to be laughed at. It's something to be valued. Now, let's talk about those sneaky compliments that don't feel quite right. You know the ones. Someone says something that sounds like a compliment, but it leaves you feeling a little confused, like maybe it wasn't so nice after all. It's like being slapped with a soft glove. You're left thinking, wait, was that a compliment or an insult? Here's the truth. Often, it's a mix of both. These backhanded compliments are a sneaky way for people to bring you down while pretending to be nice. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a time when I was working on a big project that I was super proud of. After spending countless hours on it, I finally showed it to some colleagues. One of them, who I thought supported me, looked at it and said with a smile, "Wow, this is actually pretty good for someone like you." I just stood there, stunned. At first, it sounded like a compliment, but those last words, "for someone like you," hit me hard. What did that even mean? Was I not supposed to be good at what I do? That's the tricky part about these so-called compliments. They sound nice, but there's something sneaky going on. They're not really meant to make you feel good. Instead, they're a way for the person to keep you in your place. It's like a power move, making you question yourself while they try to feel superior. They're basically saying, "I see you trying, but you'll never be as good as me." It's toxic, but it's wrapped up so nicely that you almost don't notice the hidden insult. Here's the thing. People who give backhanded compliments are often insecure themselves. They see how much potential you have, and that scares them. So they use these sneaky little comments to make sure you keep doubting yourself. It's like they're giving you a pat on the back with one hand, while holding you down with the other. And here's something even more real. We've all done it even if we didn't mean to. Sometimes our own insecurities come out in the form of these compliments that are really meant to remind someone else of their place. Here's the important message. You don't have to accept hidden insults disguised as compliments. You have the power to see them for what they really are. A reflection of that person's own insecurities, not a measure of your worth. When someone says something like, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is good for someone new," you don't have to just accept it. Call it out, even if it feels awkward, because if you don't, you're letting them control how you see yourself. And that's a power you should never give to anyone. I've learned to spot these kinds of compliments for what they really are, a mirror showing their own fears. And when you understand that, it stops hurting. Instead of letting it get to you, you can almost laugh, because their words say more about them than they do about you. So now, whenever I get a backhanded compliment, I don't let it slide. I say something like, "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" It forces them to face the hidden insult in their words, and most of the time they quickly change their tune because they realize I'm not falling for it. Here's the lesson. Don't let anyone's sneaky negativity define you. Whether it's a friend, a jealous colleague, or even a family member, remember this. Your value isn't up for debate. Compliments should make you feel good, not tear you down. If someone's words make you doubt yourself, it's time to question their motives instead. Life's too short to waste on people who can't truly celebrate your wins. Let me break it down for you. Surround yourself with people who see your worth and aren't afraid to show it. No strings attached. Now here's another sign to watch out for. They quietly leave you out of plans. It's the little things that hurt the most. Like finding out that your so-called friends forgot to invite you to dinner, a party, or a fun weekend trip. They might say it was a mistake or a last-minute plan, or worse, assume you were too busy anyway. But let's be honest, these aren't accidents. This is their sneaky way of excluding you, and it's a pretty clear sign that you're not as important to them as you thought. I've been through this too many times. I remember one weekend when I saw pictures on my phone of friends having a blast at an event I would have loved to go to. The worst part? No one even mentioned it to me beforehand. When I brought it up later, they had all kinds of excuses. Oh, we thought you were busy, or it was a last-minute thing. But deep down, I knew the truth. If they really wanted me there, they would have made sure I knew. Here's the hard truth. This kind of exclusion isn't just thoughtlessness. It's on purpose. It's their way of sending a message without having to say it directly. They don't want you around, but they don't have the courage to tell you. So instead, they hope you'll just quietly fade out of the group. No drama, no fuss. It's passive-aggressive, and honestly, pretty cowardly. But it happens a lot, even though people don't like talking about it. It's easier to believe the excuses and tell yourself it was just a mistake, rather than face the truth that you're being pushed out. Here's the deal. If you keep letting those weak excuses slide, you're basically giving them permission to leave you out again and again. You're letting them decide your role in their lives instead of standing up for yourself. I had to learn this the hard way. For a long time, I kept quiet, hoping that maybe next time I'd be included. But guess what? By staying silent, I was letting myself be treated like an afterthought. So, I did something bold. I started calling them out. I'd say, "Hey, I saw you guys went out last weekend. Why didn't anyone invite me?" Yeah, it was awkward and uncomfortable, but it made them face their actions. And you know what? Things started to change. Some got defensive, others tried to make it up to me, but the message was clear. I wasn't going to be quietly pushed aside. Here's the important takeaway. If people want you in their lives, they'll make sure you're included no matter how last minute the plan is. And if they don't, it's time to rethink those friendships. You deserve to be around people who don't make you feel like you're always chasing after their approval or attention. Real friends don't forget to invite you. They make sure you're there because they truly enjoy your company. So, if you find yourself being left out of plans, don't just brush it off. Speak up. Ask the tough questions and be ready for the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear. Because in the end, it's better to know the truth than to keep wondering why you were left out again. And remember this, you're not a backup plan, you're a priority. Make sure you surround yourself with people who treat you that way. Here's the thing. We've all heard the classic excuse, "I'm so busy, sorry, I can't hang out." It sounds legit, right? I mean, who isn't busy these days? But then you start noticing a pattern. They always seem to have time for other people, posting pics of fun outings, catching up with mutual friends. But when it's you asking to hang out, suddenly they're swamped. Here's the tough truth. They're not too busy, they're just too busy for you. I've been in that frustrating situation more times than I'd like to admit. I remember trying to reconnect with a friend I used to be really close with. Every time I suggested meeting up, they had an excuse. "I'm working late. I've got so much going on," or "maybe next week." Meanwhile, I'd see them out and about with other people, having a blast, always finding time for everyone, except me. It took me longer than I care to admit, but I finally saw the pattern. Their message was crystal clear. I wasn't a priority in their life anymore. Here's where it gets real. We've been trained to accept busy as a valid excuse, but let's be honest. People make time for what and who they care about. If they're always busy when it comes to you, it's not their schedule that's the issue. It's their priorities. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because it makes you realize you might not be as important to them as they are to you. But that's okay, because knowing where you stand is better than pretending everything's fine when it isn't. You deserve to be around people who value your time and make an effort to be in your life. Here's the tough truth. When someone says they're too busy, it's often just a polite way of saying, I don't want to spend time with you. It's easier for them to blame their schedule than to admit they're choosing not to include you in their life. It's a sneaky way to keep you at arm's length without dealing with the awkwardness of saying it straight up. They want to keep you around, just in case, without actually putting any effort into the friendship. I've been on both sides of this. There were times when I made excuses because I didn't know how to tell someone I'd outgrown the friendship. But being the one left hanging taught me an important lesson. It's better to be honest, even if it's uncomfortable, than to keep someone in the dark with excuses. When I finally asked my friend why they were always too busy, the conversation was awkward, but it gave me the clarity I needed to move on and focus on relationships where I was truly valued. Here's the big message: your time and energy are precious. Don't waste them on people who can't be bothered to make time for you. If someone is always too busy for you, it's a sign to rethink that relationship. You deserve to be around people who are excited to see you, who make an effort to include you, not just when it's convenient, but because they truly enjoy your company. It's also important to realize that people change, and so do relationships. Sometimes we hold on to people out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, even when they've clearly moved on. But letting go opens the door for you to connect with people who genuinely care about you. But here's the thing: there's real strength in knowing when to let go. It's not about being needy or demanding. It's about respecting yourself enough to walk away from people who only give you leftover time. You deserve better than that. All right, let's move on to the next part. But before we do, I noticed you haven't hit that like button yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube show our videos to more people and keeps our content coming your way. So go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It's free and it means a lot. Thanks, and let's keep going. Now let's talk about something that might feel a little awkward: physical contact, or more specifically, the lack of it. And no, this isn't just about romantic relationships. Physical contact, like a simple handshake or a pat on the back, is one of the most basic ways we connect with others. It helps build trust and closeness. So, what's going on when someone seems to avoid even the smallest bit of contact? The truth isn't pretty. They're showing you, without saying a word, that they're uncomfortable around you. I once had a coworker who acted like shaking my hand or even giving a casual pat on the back was something gross. At first I thought I was imagining things, but then I noticed they were totally fine being touchy and warm with other people. It was just me they avoided like I had some kind of invisible barrier. Eventually I realized their behavior wasn't random. It was their way of keeping me at a distance. Here's the tough part to accept. Physical touch is a natural part of how humans interact. When someone consistently avoids it, they're signaling that something's off. Sure, not everyone likes to be super touchy, and that's totally okay. But when they're hugging and high-fiving others and then freeze up around you, it's a sign that there's a disconnect. When someone avoids physical contact, it's a big red flag that something's not quite right. They might not dislike you enough to say it out loud, but their body language is definitely sending a message. We've all been in situations like this. Maybe you've shied away from a handshake because you weren't feeling it, or you've felt someone flinch when you got too close. It's awkward, right? And often it means the relationship isn't as strong as we'd like to believe. Here's the deeper truth. Physical contact is super important for building connections. It's how we show trust, warmth, and kindness. So when someone keeps their distance, they're not just avoiding a touch, they're avoiding closeness and intimacy too. They're literally and figuratively pushing you away, which signals that something is off in your relationship. I've learned to notice these signs, even when it's tough to admit what they mean. There was a time when I brushed off someone's reluctance to get close, thinking it was just their personality. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. It was about me and our connection. When I finally faced the situation and talked about it, it led to some hard conversations, and sometimes the end of that friendship. But you know what? It also freed me from the confusion of wondering why things felt off. So, here's the important part. Don't ignore the signs when someone avoids touching you. It's not just a simple choice. It says a lot about how comfortable they feel with you. If you notice this happening, speak up. It could lead to a better understanding between you, Or it might show that the friendship isn't as strong as you thought. Either way, it's better to know the truth than to pretend everything's okay. Remember, you deserve friendships where physical contact feels easy and natural, like a friendly hug, a handshake, or just sitting close without feeling weird. Those little gestures help build trust. If someone keeps avoiding them, it's a sign that something's off. Don't hesitate to ask the tough questions and make any necessary changes. Life's too short to be around people who keep you at a distance both physically and emotionally. Now, let's talk about something else. How friendships show their true colors when times get tough. When you're going through a rough patch, you find out who your real friends are. So what does it mean when someone disappears just when you need them most? It's not just a small issue. It's a big warning that they might not care about you as much as you thought. When someone pulls away during your hardest times, it hurts and feels like a betrayal. I learned this the hard way during a tough time in my life. I was going through a really tough time, something that shook me up inside. So I thought of my close friends and hoped they'd help me out, even if it was just with a quick text or call. But guess what? Nothing. It was like I was talking to a wall. The friends I counted on suddenly had all kinds of excuses. I'm super busy with work, or I'll check in later. Spoiler alert, they never did. Here's the truth. People love to say they'll always be there for you. But when things get tough, many of them vanish. They'll laugh and have fun with you during the good times, but when life gets serious, it's like they disappear. It's easier for them to ignore you than to help with your struggles because, deep down, they don't care enough to step up when you need them. Let's be real. True support isn't about being there when it's easy. It's about showing up when things get hard, uncomfortable, or when you really don't want to. When someone disappears when you need help, they're not just being rude. They're showing you how much you matter to them. It's like they're saying, "Your problems aren't important to me." I remember feeling so sad when I realized that the people I had helped during their tough times didn't even bother to help me when I needed it most. It hurt a lot. It was a big wake-up call. Definitely not a fun one. But it taught me something important. Not everyone who smiles at you is really on your side. Here's the big lesson. Support is super important in any friendship. It's easy to hang out when everything's great. But the real test is how friends react when things get tough. If someone vanishes just when you need them, they're not just letting you down. They're showing you they were never really there for you. But don't let their absence make you feel angry. Let it help you grow. Use it to figure out who truly deserves a spot in your life. The friends who stick around, check in on you, and show up even when it's hard, those are the ones who really matter. Those are the friendships you should treasure. Life is too short to waste on fair-weather friends. Surround yourself with people who will stand by you during the storms, not just when the sun is shining. When you find those special friends who are there for you when times get tough, hold on to them tightly. Now, about those who disappear, it's time to let them go. They've already shown you who they really are. And then there's gossip. Oh boy. It spreads like wildfire and can ruin friendships in no time. The thing about gossip is that it's rarely innocent. It's like a sneaky monster that can hurt people without anyone even realizing it. When someone you think is a friend talks about you behind your back, it's not just harmless chatting. They're actually hurting your trust and your reputation. It's like they're throwing rocks at your friendship while pretending to be nice to your face. I've been gossiped about before, and trust me, it feels really awful. Once I shared something personal with someone I thought was a close friend. I needed to let it out and thought they'd keep it just between us, but guess what? Just a few days later, I heard bits and pieces of our conversation floating around, twisted and exaggerated. It felt like a game of telephone where the message gets all messed up, except this time, it was being used against me. That person took my trust and turned it into a joke for others to laugh at. Here's the tough truth. People who gossip aren't just sharing stories. They're playing a sneaky game. They try to make themselves look better by putting you down without ever talking to you about it. It's not just mean, it's really unfair and toxic. And remember this, if someone gossips about others to you, they'll definitely gossip about you to someone else too. That's why trust is super important in friendships. It's a pattern, not just a one-time thing. I've seen it happen way too many times. If someone loves to spill the tea about everyone else but suddenly goes quiet around you, guess what? They're probably chatting about you when you're not around. That's like a sneaky betrayal because it happens behind your back, leaving you in the dark about what's being said. Let me tell you about a time I had to face a friend who was gossiping about me. I thought I'd get an apology or at least an explanation, but instead, they shrugged it off like it was no big deal, saying it was just some harmless chatter. But here's the truth. Gossip is never harmless. It's a betrayal, plain and simple. And it says a lot more about the person spreading the gossip than it does about you. All right, so we've gone through the 7 signs that someone dislikes you but is hiding it. Now let's wrap things up with something important, because it's not just about spotting the signs. It's about what you do once you see them. Look, it's not easy realizing that someone in your life doesn't truly like you, especially when they've been hiding it behind fake smiles and friendly words. But here's the thing. The sooner you spot these signs, the sooner you can free yourself from the stress of trying to win over people who just aren't worth it. It's like Marcus Aurelius said, we can't control other people's actions, but we can control how we respond to them. And that's exactly where your power lies. Think about it. Why waste your energy on people who aren't genuine? Life is too short to be stuck around people who don't respect or appreciate you. When you notice those little signs, whether it's the fake compliments, the backhanded jokes, or the constant criticism, you don't need to get angry or hold a grudge. You just need to step back and make a choice. A choice to focus on the people who do care about you, the ones who want to see you win, not fail. And don't get me wrong, I know it can be hard to distance yourself from people who've been part of your life for a long time. But remember, standing up for yourself isn't about causing drama or cutting everyone off. It's about valuing your peace, your self-respect, and your mental well-being. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them and act accordingly. Now here's where it gets personal. I've been in those situations too, where I held on to people for too long, hoping they'd change or finally show me the respect I deserved. And honestly, it never worked out. But when I started applying Stoic principles to my relationships, I realized that the only person I can control is me. I can't change how someone else feels or behaves, but I can decide how I respond. And that response? It's always going to be about protecting my own peace. So, if you're dealing with someone who's secretly not in your corner, here's my advice. Don't let their hidden dislike affect your self-worth. You're stronger than that. You don't need everyone to like you, and you definitely don't need to spend your time trying to figure out why someone doesn't. The right people, the ones who truly care, will never make you feel like you have to prove your value. Instead, focus on building strong, genuine connections with people who uplift you. You deserve to be surrounded by those who respect you, not people who are quietly hoping for your downfall. And like any Stoic would tell you, don't let the actions of others determine your inner peace. You have control over your mind, your emotions, and your responses. So, as we wrap up, remember, trust your instincts, protect your peace, and always stand tall in the face of hidden negativity. The truth is, not everyone will like you, and that's okay. What matters is how you carry yourself and how you choose to move forward. Stay strong, stay stoic, and keep surrounding yourself with those who lift you up. You've got this. And hey, if this video helped you, give us a thumbs up. It helps us reach more people looking for this kind of ancient wisdom. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any more lessons. Let's keep growing together on this journey of self-improvement, one Stoic step at a time. Thank you for watching. Feel free to pick a video on the screen to keep diving into Stoic wisdom. Stay Stoic.